I think, okay, we are live. But I'll just give it a few minutes for people to actually start tuning in. I don't expect too many people to come in this time because I did do a last minute decision that, okay, we're going to do something. But
Oh,
hello.
yeah.
Hi, Boyd. Been a long time. We're doing a live catch up.
We have. We last time we caught up was in Vegas, and the time before that was Orlando. It seems like we connected all the Bitcoin conferences.
Yeah. How have you been since then?
Good. I'm doing more and more in the Bitcoin space every day, just like you. It hasn't been totally public yet, but I did just join an executive team of a Bitcoin company in Mexico.
Amazing. Wait. Oh, what happened to my camera?
Good question. You were oh, there you are again.
Wait, but it changed cameras now.
It did.
Okay, we're back to this one. Wait, so you are now part of is it a Bitcoin treasury company or is it a Bitcoin mining company?
It's a native Bitcoin sort of fintech company in Mexico. It's the longest running Bitcoin company in Mexico. Was launched in 2016,
Uh-huh.
and there will be some other news announcements over the coming months. But yeah, we're going big.
Oh, it's so exciting. Everyone is kind of like, starting a Bitcoin treasury company or figuring it out. And I feel like it is about time. Like Michael has been talking about it for like 4 years and now everyone's like,
Yeah,
okay, it actually works. Let's go.
yeah, we're catching. The rest of the world's catching up.
Mm-mm. So, today is my first time having a guest on the stream with me. So we're just
Wow.
kind of, yeah, because this is the second time. So last time I did it, it was just like a 1 hour freestyle. We're learning about Bitcoin, right? The whole
Yeah.
point of this isn't like a podcast or like a talk show or anything. It's like we're learning about Bitcoin. Last time we learned about different currency debasements around the world. So I didn't know this, but Turkey is going through a really like serious debasement situation
I'm
as well.
aware. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that. So I was just like talking to the chat and everyone's telling me about like, okay, where they're from and like what's happening in their country. And then I didn't know that Canada has no gold. Canada sold all of their gold reserves. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
I didn't
That's
know that until like a month ago. I didn't know. Yeah.
and I wonder like how many different countries have done that and then they are all just on the US dollar fiat reserve.
Well, and then
Kind
we've
of
had a few countries like Germany that sold off all their Bitcoin,
yeah.
I don't know, a year ago, and they've lost like literally billions of dollars by selling it. So, yeah, a lot of countries do a lot of stupid things when it comes to money.
But the fact that Canada doesn't have any gold was so shocking to me. But anyways, I think today because we do have you on, and I don't know how often. So I was thinking I don't know how often I will be able to do these, but I think at least once a week or a few times a week because we're gonna try and get to 100, right? And different times I'll get whoever is available. If Boyd's available on some days, you come, or someone else is available for a few minutes, few hours, you come. But yeah, today now that we have you, I think as a real professor, you can actually teach me and teach us, those who are watching, a lot more about Bitcoin. And I guess because you're like a business professor as well, maybe give a bit of a background. What type of subjects do you teach?
So, I mostly have been teaching around topics associated with technology, innovation, and sustainability. Basically, like how can we make the world a better place through exponential technologies? I'm teaching the same course to two groups of MBA students right now. I'm at EGADE Business School, which is the number one business school in Latin America. It's part of the Tecnológico de Monterrey. And today, for example, we did a 3 hour session on Bitcoin, and it was super fun because only one of the students has owns any Bitcoin. Most of them
Oh,
know nothing,
wait.
and
So in
they
the universities, they allow you to teach about Bitcoin now.
I do what I want, so I teach about Bitcoin because I want to. You know how toxic Bitcoin maxis are like, we can't
Mhm.
stop talking about Bitcoin no matter where we are. That's just how we are. Well, I'm the
Yeah.
same way. It's just that I have a like a megaphone because I get to teach MBA students. So I said, okay, today's session was about exponential technologies and how they'll change the world. So what better technology to talk about than Bitcoin? So I did a whole 3-hour session. That wasn't just me. I invited the CEO and co-founder of the company I just joined called Capital X. So he came for a while. I also invited another guy. He's a younger guy, and he's the one who started Adrian. He started the Bitcoin Monterey meetup group. So I wanted the students to get different perspectives on Bitcoin and why it matters in Mexico and the world. So yeah, that was fun.
So for 3 hours, what parts of Bitcoin did you talk about? Did you just talk about the overall what is Bitcoin, or was it more on the impacts of Bitcoin on the world? And also, I know you have like the Bitcoin Singularity stuff, which I have so much to talk to you about, because since the last time we met, right, I've been focusing on making short form content on TikTok and not mostly Instagram. Anyone who follows me on Instagram, you guys know I've been like really trying really hard. But and because I realized that if you want to create a bigger audience or just get more people to see Bitcoin and look at Bitcoin, you should I make it more aligned with technology, right? So instead of just being like Bitcoin, 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 which is what I want, because we are the toxic maxis, I have to put in technology, which is also what I like to talk about. So it's been very interesting talking more about AI as well. And continuously, as I tell more AI news, I see in my head, and I just really want to say, all this stuff is useless. And not that there are no good tools, there are definitely good tools. It's just that more and more people are just raising money from VCs for the sake of just raising money and for the sake of capitalism, because they don't understand that by adopting a Bitcoin standard, you're able to no longer just chase money for the sake of chasing money, but actually making time to master a craft and master doing something. Because I see so many of these overinflated AI startup evaluations, and I'm just like, guys, none of these projects are ever gonna like pass the benchmark, the hurdle rate, which is Bitcoin's annual growth, right? If you can't even pass the Bitcoin annual growth, like what are you building? There are definitely some good and exceptional tools, but I also see a lot of people building things that are essentially going to be detrimental to the humanity, right? Like we don't build things to advance civilization anymore. We just build them for the sake of getting money from investors, or just for the sake of, like, I don't know.
I would challenge you a little bit on that. I mean, it's an interesting, perception. I agree in principle. First of all, we know fiat does this to everything, and fiat has done that to venture capital, to venture investing. So when you have easy money and other people have easy money and they're looking for ways to generate returns on the easy money they got, some of them become limited partners in venture capital funds. They flow their money to VCs, hoping that they'll get a better return than inflation, et cetera. Just like people flow into stocks and gold and real estate with the same thing. We know that's happening, and you're right. In every time there's like a tech boom in some sector, you see a mass of people trying to like create a startup. I would say, because I saw this in the ICO days of the crypto space as well, there's a percentage of builders who just want to build things that will make a difference in the world, but they often know that it takes money to do that, and they're willing to adapt to where the money is flowing to try to do something powerful in a space where they can generate capital to do it. Now, I don't know what percentage of it is what, but like when you ask what I spoke about today and kind of like what my topics are, like I look at, Bitcoin and exponential technologies across the board, whether it's renewables, AI, IoT. I look at a lot of technologies that I do believe are converging: biotech, nanotech, robotics, and all these things. There are some really serious builders building really important things, some of them raising really good money to do something big at scale. So it's not that everybody chasing money is doing it just to chase money. But you're right that fiat has distorted the incentives and the flow of money. And so you get like excessive valuations of startups based on the latest hot technology, like today is AI.
Yeah. So within Mexico, because you work very closely with, I guess, the innovations labs or like the business side, what are the things that people are building there, and what are the main conversational topics? Because I know recently when I went to San Francisco, it was all about AI and longevity, right? So is that also something similar in Mexico, or are you guys going different area?
You don't hear that much longevity. I spoke about longevity in the last couple of days in my class, and I was like dropping bombs on them that my students had no idea about. Like
Dropping
Mexico
bombs.
tends to be a little bit behind like San Francisco, or I can't speak for Thailand and other places, but like I mean, I can't speak for Europe. Europe is a bit behind too, but compared to the US is where you're seeing, I think, the most discussion about longevity, especially Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
And I actually think that some people dismiss that as like, oh, these are just rich people trying to live longer. I think it's much more fundamental than that. When you talk to people deep in longevity, they're looking at ways to extend the quality of life of people. It's not always just about, can I, as a rich person, buy myself 2 more decades of life? There is some of that, of course, but it goes way more than that. It's like longevity is much deeper than just adding years to your life. It's about adding quality of years to your life. And when you look at the convergence of genetics, biotech, AI, nanotech, all of these are converging on longevity. I think it's a fascinating space. And I was talking about this with my students, and this idea of longevity escape velocity, which is, the argument that around 2030, it's possible that for every year you live, technology is buying you 1 more year of life. And my students were like, what is this crazy gringo talking about? So that's a little far-fetched for them. AI is a huge topic. I think that one is pretty pervasive worldwide. And I can validate something that goes back to the question of Bitcoin and AI and what's being talked about in the boardrooms, because I've been able to engage twice now with somebody who used to be a governor for the Bank of Mexico, the Central Bank of Mexico, about Bitcoin and about other topics. And just in the last month, I've spoken to him twice in private meetings. And the second time, the first time I asked him, I said, what is the central bank talking about with respect to Bitcoin? And I said, what are you hearing from the private sector? He said, the central bank has Bitcoin on the radar, but they're not really thinking about it. They don't have a clear strategy. And when he said the corporate board, he's on 5 boards, including of some of the biggest companies in all of Mexico. One is a massive, I won't name them, but they're a massive construction company everyone knows. And there's a bank. He's on the board of many. He said he hasn't heard the word Bitcoin mentioned once in any board meeting. But he did say that AI is the hot topic. They're all worried about how AI could destroy their company or how they could turn it to their advantage. So I would say AI is very pervasive if you talk about the high corporate level, and Bitcoin is not being talked about at the high levels of government or the public sector companies. However, what's curious about Mexico, which is kind of true in a lot of Latin America, I would say, I don't know what you would say about, for example, in Thailand, but while there isn't very experienced, wealthy, or well-positioned public or private actors in Bitcoin so much yet, other than Ricardo Salinas, who you probably know of. I don't know if you met him yet, but he's a billionaire, top 5 wealthiest people in Mexico. He's hardcore Bitcoiner, just came out with a Bitcoin book, has allocated 80% of his private portfolio to Bitcoin. Outside of him, the rest of Mexico leaders are not talking about Bitcoin. However, what's curious is there's an awesome grassroots movement of Bitcoin across Mexico. So you have like these pockets of communities and circular economies, ISA, who helped start the circular economy in Isla Mujeres. We have in Merida, they have a group that's called Mayan Bitcoin. They're hosting a conference in December. You should come. We have a group now that's...
What date in December? Actually, I haven't heard of this conference. What's the date?
Mayan Bitcoin. It's December 4th to 6th. I know all the organizers. I'm speaking there myself. If you want to come and maybe speak as well, let me know. I'll see what I can do. And then...
what's that? Yeah.
Then we have
I'll have to.
Guadalajara, Monterrey. So a bunch of these communities all around Mexico are forming, but it's very grassroots, bottom up, and that involves like the circular economy thing, but it also involves startups. So we have
Mm,
a grassroots startup movement around Bitcoin, around wallets, around exchange, around brokering, around Bitcoin backed lending,
I have a
real estate
question
in
for you
Bitcoin.
about that actually, because what I noticed, and similar to our conversation we had in Vegas, and you just mentioned as well, a lot of people who are into technology and want to advance the world and want to change the world go into the hot tech. Like right now, it's AI. It used to be crypto or like blockchain before, but with Bitcoin, because Bitcoin in itself is not a project, it's a complete product, and it's not something that gambles on what is going to be the future of the world, but something that fixes the world as it is now. It is harder for any builder to come in and be like, hey, let me build around in Bitcoin. It's before, right? Like before, it was like most people just like do other things. Not many people were building on Bitcoin, but now that it is easier to build on Bitcoin, there are more people coming in, lots of different wallets. In the future, probably, I don't know what your take is. Do you think will all these products, because there's a lot of duplicates, right? Like, oh, there's like this wallet, this wallet, this wallet does the same thing. Some people try and do lending and stuff on chain now. Do you think a lot of the duplicates will disappear, or like how will all the technology converge as Bitcoin develops?
Yeah, wallets, as an example, are being commoditized in a way, and it will. There could be a race to the bottom, like competing on fees or something, which is what happens in a lot of industries when you have a lot of sort of copycats. You are going to see some that succeed more in particular regions. So I've also been representing Jan3, the Samson Mao company, which has Aqua Wallet, and they have done really well in Latin America. They're less
Yeah,
known in other markets.
yeah, we tried it in Vegas and it worked really well.
Yeah, I remember your shock and awe and amazement at like how easy everything was, how fast it was, how cheap it was. Yeah, that was awesome. And we got that on camera too. So we got like your first reactions to it. But my point is there will be successful wallets type businesses that tend to form in certain communities and countries because they build a critical mass and they serve the local community. They're from the local community. But I think what you'll probably see over time is a lot more of that kind of thing being bedded in more multi-purpose apps and
Mm.
projects that offer a lot more. Like the company I now am helping lead called Capital X with a K. We have a wallet, but the wallet is just a tool for money flow in and out of the other things we offer. So we have Bitcoin backed lending. We have brokering, so you can get the best terms on buying Bitcoin or USDT. We're going to start offering a custody solution. We have a credit card as well, so you can flow Bitcoin in and out of a credit card and then use it for fiat purchases. We're going to make that cash back with Bitcoin soon, which is going to be super cool. My point being, I think in the future, you're going to see, yes, you'll see continued proliferation of wallets, but to differentiate yourself and to actually add continued value, the wallet won't be the only thing that you're offering. You'll have other ways to deliver value to customers. I think even, for example, the Orange Pill app, you might be familiar with them. I'm pretty
I
sure
haven't.
no.
Yeah, what is it?
So Orange Pill is an app that was born to help connect Bitcoiners as they're moving around the world. So you basically, it's like a Facebook for Bitcoiners, kind of. But
Never heard of that. Okay, let me see if I can even get it on my app store because I'm
oh,
on the
you
Thai.
can. I think it's global. They have some cool features, and they're
Oh,
bringing
that'll
out
be
more.
so, because I am traveling to Europe. Like I'm going to like 5 different countries like in a week. So if I can meet up with some Bitcoiners, but
Yeah,
it
that's
doesn't have.
what it's for. That's what it's for. Like Orange Pill. Let's see. Let me show you. Let's see. You
Doesn't
you must have it there. I was just
when
gonna
I
show.
search orange pill, it doesn't come up. So maybe I need to go orange travel. No.
Let's see. Here's how it looks. Orange Pill.
Yeah, I don't see that. I'll have to look it up online and see if I can get a download link.
So they have a simplified wallet that looks like this. It doesn't have all the functions other things do. But
Yeah.
what's really cool about it is like the wallet is very social, which makes sense.
Okay.
But like they have a thing that you can zap people Bitcoin if they're in your near proximity just for fun. Like
But
I can
what's the
I can
safety privacy situation? Because it's not like Facebook where you see everyone's face, right? You just see, oh, there's, I can think of a lot of dangerous situations. For example, if someone's a kidnapper or a thief, they open Orange Pill, they see there are Bitcoiners there. What if they go and like put you in danger? I don't know.
So I
Anything
heard
could
the
happen.
same concern. I heard about Orange Pill app probably a year ago and didn't download it till a few months ago.
Yeah.
And the only reason I downloaded it was because I discovered that um, they don't share your actual location with any accuracy. So they do it within like 10 miles of where you are. It's not like you know who's in the same room with you. But like you said, like imagine you're flying to Denver or Miami or I don't care, Tokyo,
Yeah.
and you want to meet some people that are into Bitcoin. You can open the app and you can find out who's within 10 miles of you.
Mm.
And you don't know who they are because unless they choose to, they don't put their face or their name on it. But you can interact with them, say, hey, is anybody doing a Bitcoin meetup tonight or whatever? And where are Bitcoiners hanging out in town today or tomorrow? Is there a cafe or whatever? And so you can meet other Bitcoiners, but in a more informal way where they can't track your movements, because that is concerning.
Yeah, because like we were saying, right? It's hard to imagine what all the new apps and things that will be built within the Bitcoin movement, within the Bitcoin system is going to be, because I feel like Bitcoin is having like this new reemergence in builders. Like that's how it feels, because in the past, I don't know many people who were building in Bitcoin up until recently. Now I go to Bitcoin conferences. There's a lot of different things. Now you go from not just wallets into kind of social media, which is very interesting because Bitcoin is a very anonymous kind of like safety cypherpunk kind of industry, right? But now you kind of
That's
have
true.
people who do more social stuff, which is interesting to see what will happen next. I didn't
Yesterday,
know.
I saw a deck from a guy I met through the ecosystem in Mexico who's already built a company that is tokenizing real estate on Bitcoin.
Like 1,000 times. Like tokenized. Why? Can you explain to me why it doesn't work? Like over the past 5 years, like every single boy who likes real estate has come up to me, or I go up to them, ask, "What do you do?" And they're like, "Oh, we're trying to build a startup that tokenizes real estate." Like, how come none of them have worked? And how will the Bitcoin one work different?
Yeah, valid question. I mean, I think I have a theory, which we'll have to see. It's my hypothesis that over time, anything that will scale will eventually be deployed on Bitcoin as opposed to the other smart contract ecosystem. So a lot of the tokenized real world asset stuff has been done in the Ethereum, Solana,
Yeah.
etc. world. And one of the reasons why, so if something starts to gain traction over there, they're going to deploy on Bitcoin because Bitcoin has 7x or more liquidity. There's just a lot more money flowing through the Bitcoin economy than any other crypto economy. So it's just a logical next step. So you can deploy in any Ethereum, Solana, Sui you want, but eventually you're probably going to want to deploy on Bitcoin. That doesn't mean you would abandon your original deployment. You might keep them in parallel operating. Okay,
Yeah.
so why hasn't it worked yet? I think there are some that are gaining more traction than others. I haven't tracked the space enough lately to tell you which ones are doing better than others. So I wouldn't say they've all failed. I think there's some that are growing. I know tokenized securities has grown a
Yeah.
lot. And
Like Robinhood did one, right? Like
what's that?
Robinhood.
Yeah.
Robinhood recently into that. Yeah.
And now there's a way you can tokenize stock on Liquid.
Huh?
On Liquid you can already do, which is Adam Back's company, but now you can do it on Lightning as well. I'm not aware of exactly the specifics of how you can execute that, but I think like the closer you can get to layer one Bitcoin, probably the more likely it will get more adoption and more interest. There's less sort of risk of bridging your Bitcoin and doing things that could be dangerous. So we'll see where it goes. But my guess, here's my underlying, aside from the hypothesis I just told you, my other one is, and I think you agree, but like eventually the entire world is going to be built with a base layer of the economy is Bitcoin. Okay, yeah. So if the entire global economy is built on Bitcoin, and we know there are inherent, recognized, accepted limits to what can happen on layer one, like transaction volumes. We had the whole block size wars. We know what happened there. There's a limit of number of transactions on the layer one. At some point, probably there will be a cost barrier for a lot of transactions. Right now, no, but in the future, yeah. So it'll have to go on Lightning and on Rootstock and Liquid and Stacks and other layer two side chains and more. And not only that, if we have a multi-trillion-dollar economy built off of fiat, if the future is all of that economy moves to Bitcoin, it's not just about where it happens, like on the layer one or layer two, but it's like the entire world's economy will be transacted somewhere in the Bitcoin ecosystem, because Bitcoin will become eventually the global world reserve currency and everything else. So any economic activity that we have today, like whether that's foreign exchange, whether that's, buying and selling of homes, whether that's restaurants, serving food, it doesn't matter. Everything will eventually happen on Bitcoin. That's just where the world is going. So that's why, as you say, you're starting to see even more interest in building on Bitcoin, because I think more and more innovators are recognizing where the world is going, that Bitcoin is not just a better crypto asset. It's actually becoming the base layer of the world's economy. As such, we need to build products and services on top of it.
Yeah, no, I 100% feel it. And also I think people are slowly waking up to understand this. Because like I said, right, I've been trying to talk to a more kind of like general, less Bitcoiny audience who are into technology, but bringing the conversation of Bitcoin as a technology to them. And a lot of people, especially during the recent all-time highs, they were asking me questions about Bitcoin more often, because, all-time highs serve as a, I guess, topic opener for a lot of people to, I didn't realize like the Bitcoin was so high now. Most people who weren't following didn't realize until recently that, oh my gosh, last time I saw it was 30K. Now it's 120K. How did that happen? So I've been talking to a lot of people around technology about Bitcoin. And this is one of the main things. Like I always tell them, there are so many smart people in Bitcoin who is beyond just the financial side, right? Because my whole, I guess, branding or like just what I do about Bitcoin is completely not about the financial side. It's definitely more about the technology and the people, like talking about how your life revolves around Bitcoin. Like you are one of my great examples. So for everyone watching, we did a podcast together and it was the longest one because we just yap like for an hour and a half. Just about life, about everything. So you guys can look forward to that. But I guess because it will take a little bit of time, I have like a backlog. I'm going through them. Yours will probably come up next month or something. We can talk a little bit more about the stuff we talked about there. Your book. I have it here in the back of my of my setup is the Bitcoin Singularity.
That's awesome. Yeah. Have you gotten through it yet?
I'm only on chapter 4, but
okay. Progress.
It is. It's progressing. It's definitely my type of topic, like your book, out of all the Bitcoin stuff that I've been reading, because I think once the Bitcoin movement, or like once Bitcoin grows to the certain extent, like bigger beyond just kind of like our niche group, there will have to be a lot more books that are not just finance, right? Some that are technical, like about technology, about the future. Some that's more like lifestyle people. I'm also thinking about a collection of stories from different people who are in Bitcoin, who have moved their life onto the Bitcoin standard. Maybe that would be an interesting book as well.
It would be, especially from like different economic backgrounds in terms of like how much and like where they live, like if they live in poor countries and what, like have they built a business on Bitcoin? Do they have a normal fiat job, but they basically move all their money to Bitcoin right away? How do they get by living day to day when most of the things around them are not accepting Bitcoin yet? Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff there. And I agree. Like, I think the angle you've taken with your sort of social media and your outreach around sort of I would say humanizing Bitcoin is kind of like the 2-word summary of what you're trying to do. And I think that's so important because, as you say, like there's so much content around TradFi and finance and Bitcoin number go up, and what are the macroeconomic factors driving Bitcoin's prices. I mean, I listen to podcasts on Bitcoin literally every day, hours a day, and I would say 90% of all that content is tied to what I just said. Some kind of macroeconomic price movement stuff and news, but news related Bitcoin that has a good chance of making Bitcoin go up in price. Not a lot around humanizing Bitcoin. Like, how is it changing people's lives? And, going back to what I talked about today in my class, I basically went through the book.
Yeah.
But what was funny is I took 45 minutes just on chapter 1, which is the problem with fiat, but humanizing the problem with fiat, talking about real people and how it's creating income inequality, and how for people who aren't close to the money printer, how is it damaging them? What's happening in Mexico around this, because they're not that aware. Like my students, they're MBAs at one of the best business school in Latin America. Most of them don't have a clear idea what even causes inflation. They don't know that banks don't need to hold 100% of the money that they lend out, that they only use 10% and they lend out, a multiple of that. So like I had to get through all that stuff first, because if you don't understand the problem, you can't actually understand why Bitcoin changes the world. So I did half of my first part of the talk was on that. And then I went through all the things you and I talked about around like how Bitcoin is going to, like how it's accelerating renewable energy creation and impacting people's lives in Africa. And I showed how Gridless is doing that. I did the fiat food and how Bitcoin could actually change the incentives so we have more regenerative agriculture. I talked about Bitcoin and consumerism, Bitcoin and housing, and how having sound money is going to sort of demonetizing housing, and therefore we're going to have more inclusive housing. So I had a guy who came to talk, and he's literally, I don't know his age exactly, but he's like 20, 21 years old. He's in university, but he's a hardcore Bitcoiner. He's the one who's leading the Bitcoin Monterey community. And I asked him to talk about these things, and he talked about how he got into Bitcoin feeling like he couldn't get ahead and there was no future for him in the fiat world, and that Bitcoin gave him hope. And he talked about how all of his Gen Z friends are like disenchanted with the economy and they can't see a path forward and they can never imagine buying a house. And now he can, because he started a few years ago. He can start to see that future. So that was what I was trying to infuse with my students. And like you said, very different than talking about number go up and macro.
Because I think from the past few weeks, and I guess like I've been talking to my friends, and especially my little sister and her kind of group of friends for a while now, for the younger people, when I say younger, like in their early 20s, the idea of owning a house or just having savings is so far beyond what they think they can do. Like even at Thailand it's cheaper, but a lot of my friends in Sydney, their whole life goal is just to save enough money to buy a house. You know what I mean? Like you don't have goals and ambitions beyond just shelter, which is crazy to me. I'm like, bro, that should be a basic level of I have shelter, I have a house that I like to live in. But yeah, Bitcoin changes that. Bitcoin shifts that. After you save money in Bitcoin for a while, you'll realize. So one thing I realized is this past week, I was talking to a group of my high school friends. We were just having dinner and stuff. And because Bitcoin was hitting all-time high, they asked me about it. So I came up with an analogy that I think works well with people who are not into Bitcoin. So we were talking about high interest savings accounts, right? So she was saying, oh yeah, she puts her money into the bank and it gives her 0.5% and all that. So I told her, I have been saving my money in Bitcoin for a while now, and each year Bitcoin goes up a minimum of 30%. It sounds like some type of I'm trying to sell you something, but no, this is just you look at the
Yeah.
facts, right? That's just how it's been. So I just use Bitcoin as a savings account, a very high yield savings account. So you get the upside as well. And that got her very curious about, okay.
Interesting.
And then she set up a wallet like right there. I was like, yeah, we can
Awesome.
set up a wallet. I can teach you. And now she's been kind of like DCAing for the past week because Bitcoin was high, and then she didn't want to put all her money at all-time high. So I was like, just separate your however much you want to put in just to try. Oh, what happened to my camera again?
I don't know.
I'll try again. Oh, okay. I think it's just, I'm using an external camera. That's why, guys. But anyways, yeah. And then that works for them. Them hearing that it's a, what's it called? A high interest, I guess, high percent increase per year.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
it's
Okay.
go
We
ahead.
have some comments. I just saw that we actually are having comments so far. So we have 370 people watching right now, Boyd, and a few comments. Some people say, I think professor title is better suited for code. He is actually a professor in a university. For anyone, that's why he sounds like a professor. I am a fake professor who talks about Bitcoin as a subject. So for people wondering does he not have professor in his name, you're professor all day. Today you're just Boyd.
Just Boyd. My students like to call me doctor or professor, but I'm just Boyd. It's all right.
Okay, so for people watching, because we have a few people joining now, can you guys tell us like where you're from and what's the Bitcoin narrative in your city or country now, and then we'll talk about it with each other. And also, I see a lot of people asking you about technology specific questions, so maybe I'll bring some of the questions up. So this person asked, okay, we'll just show one at a time. In the far future, you can determine the value of Bitcoin based on, oh, no, this is the answer. Sorry. The answer to someone else's question. Okay, here. Just curious, in the far future, Bitcoin becomes the bedrock currency of transaction, then how would you determine the value? And then someone else answered it for you, but maybe you want to have a go as well?
It's the purchasing power of Bitcoin is how you measure it when it's the only money in the world. It's not compared to fiat anymore. It's like one Bitcoin today. Let's imagine a future, right, where the world has adopted Bitcoin around the world. Basically, one Bitcoin in the year 2040 in my country buys the average house. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What happens 3 years from now? 0.45 Bitcoin buys the average house. So what you would see is that the purchasing power of Bitcoin increases over time compared to the things you need to buy.
So someone else also answered, and I think they're correct as well, similar to what you said. In the future, you can determine the value of Bitcoin based on its purchasing power. Exactly.
That's the answer.
Yeah. Yeah. So another one. Oh, I didn't realize we had so many questions. Currently see the need to get sustainability and social entrepreneurship closer to Bitcoin.
Yeah, I love that. That's so. I don't know if you checked my background, but my basically all of my research in the academic world was in sustainable entrepreneurship, and I started doing that research back in 2001. I was one of the earliest OGs in that space, and I only recently got into Bitcoin and education around this and the intersection of them in the last 18 months. So it's a very new topic, and I think what they is trying to do around this is so important because of that. It's like if you start humanizing Bitcoin, you start recognizing how fiat is dehumanizing and how Bitcoin re-energizes humanity and gives us hope again. And when you start seeing the world that way, you start seeing opportunities everywhere to say, okay, if Bitcoin could change the world in so many ways, whether that's energy or food or consumerism or housing, all right, what is the thing I know that I could do that could be like my, grain of sand, or however you want to describe it, my impact on the world through Bitcoin? And that's basically what happened to me. As I've been committed to sustainable innovation for 25 years. And the more I got into Bitcoin, the more I realized how it could transform humanity. So I said, okay, how do I bring my expertise and my passion for changing the world through technology? How can I combine that with Bitcoin. And I think that's what a lot of Bitcoiners are starting to do now. They're saying, okay, I have a normal fiat day job that's totally unrelated. I either need to find a way to get my day job to embrace Bitcoin in a way that I feel good, or I need to do something different. Like Thea is doing something different and basically creating her own career out of Bitcoin now. So I think that's important, and we're going to start seeing more of it.
Yeah. I think a lot of people who are watching right now are writing lots of comments. I cannot keep up. Can you see them, Boyd, or do I have to?
Them. I do see them.
Oh, you see them?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll pick a few. So, okay, you were talking about sustainability, right? We have someone here who is studying sustainability and starting to orange pill people. I think so. I have a question for you, Yannick. Are you like entrepreneurship sustainability or just overall like kind of climate sustainability? Does he answer that so we can kind of talk about it in more specific terms?
I don't want to over pitch my book, but the book that she referenced, Bitcoin Singularity, is part of the answer to this question, because to my knowledge, it's the first or one of the first books ever written about Bitcoin that is directly focused on the intersection of Bitcoin and sustainability. My thought when I went into the book was basically like, so many people in Bitcoin talk about fix the money, fix the world, but they don't go into much depth about exactly what they mean and how that could actually happen in the real world. And so I said, well, let me do more research and think about all the ways if we embraced a Bitcoin standard, Bitcoin would help change the world and improve people's lives. And so that's why I wrote this book. So if you're trying to orange pill people that have a more sustainability oriented background, I think my book would be a good start. Depends on who the people are, but you kind of have to meet people where they are. Like, what is the passion they care about? Do they care about energy? Well, then, dive deep into how Bitcoin is accelerating renewable energy adoption in, developing countries. Do they care about the quality of food? Dive deep into what's happening with fiat and how it's distorting the incentives around our food supply and affecting quality of life and creating disease, and how Bitcoin could help accelerate regenerative agriculture. So basically, meeting people where they are and having enough understanding of all these different areas of how Bitcoin could change the world to then be able to articulate to them so that they understand, like Thea just said about, she was talking to somebody about saving and how she saves and so she worded her answer in terms of how Bitcoin is how she saves and why it's better than saving in a bank. So I think it's that you got to meet people where they are. And I think a lot of Bitcoiners fail in sort of trying to say the same thing to people. It's like square peg, round hole. Not everyone buys the same message and the same narrative. So you have to understand what they care about.
Exactly, because I made this new series just for fun where I cook and I talk about Bitcoin topics, right? I call it the Bitcoin Wife series. The first episode, I talked about the Fed. The second episode, what did I talk about? I forgot what the second episode was, but the third one is about savings, which I'm going to release today. But then I realized that not everyone wants to talk about inflation or the Fed all the time. That might be something I want to talk about, because there's so many things you can dig into in terms of conspiracy theories and whatever, who controls the world. But not everyone wants to talk about that, especially some of my friends who are girls. They're like, Thea, you are too obsessed about all these different things. But when I talk about savings accounts and, okay, if you want to buy that bag or you want to go on that trip, it's way cheaper if you save in Bitcoin now, if you want to afford it. So we go on that route. Wait, I think the connection has been lost. Boyd, are you still there? Oh, okay, guys. I will text him and see what happened to the connection. But yeah, I'll just continue talking to you guys a little bit about that experience, right? So, he's coming back. He's coming back.
Sorry about that.
I was just like, are you just really intentfully listening, or did you fall off?
I'm sure you just changed the world with what you said, and probably all the listeners are like, I don't need to hear that guy anymore.
No, no, but yeah, it's just like you say, you contextualize it. Someone did mention in here, so the same guy who asked about, okay, if you now work on, if we work on a Bitcoin standard, how do we price everything else? He says, I feel disconnected to the conversation, might have to look into Bitcoin more. I can understand what they're even talking about. Okay, we can roll it back to a little bit more a lifestyle and casual tone about, okay, how can Bitcoin affect more than just you financially? Because I think that is the main thing. I went to a park in San Francisco, and it was for a different meetup, not a Bitcoin meetup. It was for people who were interested in understanding more about consciousness. So it was like teachers and professors who study psychology and consciousness. And lots of different people came. And one guy sat down next to me and we started talking. He asked why I'm in the US. And then I told him I'm here for a Bitcoin conference, blah, blah, blah. And he said, you know, I've always seen stuff about Bitcoin, but I just don't see how it will relate to me. That's why I never got into it, and it's too technical. So we went down talking more about, like, you know, inflation, saving money, buying a house. And then afterwards he was like, okay, that kind of makes sense now, but because of the work that he does and he lives in San Francisco, he doesn't have enough money to invest in Bitcoin. What would you say to someone who says that?
That conversation came up in my class today too. Students like, yeah, he was like, I'm convinced I'd like to start saving Bitcoin, but I don't have very much money. And my answer is, like many people, you DCA, you talked about DCAing a minute ago, which is dollar cost averaging. And one point I'd like to sort of modify in your reflection about your friend who said she didn't want to invest when we were at the peak. Yeah. True DCA, dollar cost averaging, is saying I have a certain, whatever how small it is, it could be $3 a week, a month, it doesn't matter. I have a small amount of income every month that I have left over that I can save. Rather than putting it in the bank account like Faya's friend does, who gets 0.5%, you could put it into Bitcoin. And if it's let's just say it's $3 equivalent no matter what country you're in. $3 a month, and you can always do it on the 16th of every month because you get paid on the 15th. The real DCA model should be, in my opinion, and many people's opinions, is you put $3 of Bitcoin in every 16th of the month. You don't pay any attention to the price. One day it's up higher, one day it's down lower. You know why? Yes. Because all of us know where Bitcoin is going. It's basically up only. I mean, it has this kind of, in the short, if you zoom in too close, you might see it drop a few $1,000s and it's 120,000, whatever it is. But if you zoom out just a little bit, it's always basically going up. And so you shouldn't worry about trying to time the market. It's impossible to time the market. Even the experts make mistakes and they lose a lot of money trying to time the market. If you have $3 every 16th of every month, just put $3 in on the 16th and don't worry about it. Don't fret about the short-term price volatility of Bitcoin. And 5-10 years from now, you're going to be so happy you did it.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm just charging my computer. You can continue talking. I agree with you. That's kind of what I told them as well. If you want to invest in the long-term future of Bitcoin, it's like there's no peak, right? Because it will keep going up forever. That's something that my father, sorry, my computer not charging. It's being very weird, but we'll see.
I'm gonna respond to Yannick's. Yannick has a comment which I really like. I'd like to follow up with his sort of comment. Bitcoin seems like a foundational tech for sustainable development in developing countries, and a civic gov tech could be built around it. What does Boyd think about that? 100% agree. I think it's an underexplored topic right now, which is like, how can Bitcoin be adopted at scale, not just as a money, but as a technology that could transform people's lives around the world? Like I showed a video today in my class of a project just like what you described. It's there's a nonprofit in Peru called Motive International, MOTIV, and they did a project in a rural community of Peru. It's a poor community. They're all unbanked. They can't even get fiat in their community very easily. But they're a community that tries to serve each other. Like they have their own farmland. They have their own little kiosks and little mini supermarkets and bakeries and things, but they have problems getting actual money. They can't get banked there and everything else. So Motive helped them get on board to Bitcoin. And now they have their own little circular economy operating in that community. And in the video, you start hearing about how it's really like empowering people's lives, and they're growing their own local economy and their own individual quality of life for their families through Bitcoin. And I think these stories and the power of Bitcoin to do that, to sort of disintermediate the world, decentralize the world, let communities sort of leverage this technology to improve their own lives, making it easier for people to send money to their friends and family around the world very cheaply, very fast. There's so many things Bitcoin can enable that is very beneficial to developing countries, and it's underexplored. And I'll say one more thing, like I have a chapter in my book just on Bitcoin cities, and it goes to your question around like civic and GovTech. I developed this model, it's like the Bitcoin cities wheel, and it looks like a wheel, and it looks at 6 categories of the ways cities could leverage Bitcoin to become a Bitcoin city. And it's way more than having it as a reserve. It's like, what could you do to attract Bitcoin entrepreneurs? How could you use Bitcoin in public transit systems? Could you tokenize rewards and incentives for positive civic behavior? I look at like a whole holistic way of thinking about it. Can citizens pay their taxes in Bitcoin? A whole bunch of things like that. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that in the future.
So now that you've mentioned Bitcoin City, because I'm also wondering, right? In order for because there's a lot of circular economies, which I haven't been to. I was wondering if you have gone to a kind of like Bitcoin Beach, circular economies and stuff like that. And most of Asia, I would say Southeast Asia, where I'm in, we don't really have Bitcoin payments yet. But when we do, I don't think it will be that much different from the current payment system that we have. Because in Thailand, everything is a scan QR code. And like I said to you, when we tried to pay for something with Bitcoin, so context for everyone watching, Boyd and I met many times now in the US, but for our latest time we saw each other was in Vegas, Bitcoin Vegas, and he took me to Shake and Shack, and at the time they had a Bitcoin burger, Bitcoin smoothie, Bitcoin burger. We were able to use a wallet, so use Aqua Wallet to buy a burger, and that was my first ever Bitcoin transaction. It was 20,000 stats. I don't know how much that is now. It's probably like a very expensive one day that will become a very expensive burger, but we have to get used to just spending Bitcoin. But yeah, what was I saying? Yeah, like it doesn't sound like it will be that hard to transition from like a Thailand. But what if there's a city that's not used to kind of doing these transactions? How would you imagine all cities to develop into a Bitcoin economy? Do you think it will be just some pockets first and slowly, or do you think it will be a very swift transition?
Both probably. So like, it's interesting when you look at the company Jan3, which is led by Samson Mow, famous Bitcoiner. They have this sort of like, they do a lot of consulting to nation states to try to help them understand the power of Bitcoin. And they also have the Aqua Wall, which is very grassroots. Yeah. And I've been helping them looking at the city regional level, because that's where people live. And it's a layer above the grassroots, but below the nation state. And the reason I bring this up is I think you're going to see, we are seeing, I don't know, Panama City very recently announced that you're now going to be able to pay taxes in Bitcoin. I don't think the Bitcoin community in Panama City is known for being extremely vibrant and like high rate of adoption of Bitcoin yet. So they beat their country to this. So the city was first, and the citizens will follow, and the country is now talking about it too. You'll see other places like in El Salvador where actually it was grassroots first on Bitcoin Beach, then it went nation state to the country of El Salvador with Bukele. And then it went, okay, well, what if we do some Bitcoin city work? Like they have a project around a Bitcoin city. My point being, you're going to see parts of the world where it's very grassroots, bottom up, these Bitcoin circular economies that form in little communities. You're going to see some where it's city led, and you're going to see some where it's nation state led, and they all can work. I think like the true cypherpunk Bitcoin ethos would probably advocate more for the grassroots up. So like you get enough people, you go neighborhood by neighborhood, community by community, you start getting more people into Bitcoin, small businesses learning how to use Bitcoin. That's what ISA's been doing in Isla Mujeres, literally going like door to door to little businesses, trying to help explain to them the value of accepting Bitcoin, doing education sessions for them in the community. And then, they're just a small community in a very large country in Mexico. But there's a lot of other small communities in Mexico that are doing similar things. And gradually over time, when you have enough critical mass of people that are adopting Bitcoin, the beauty of Bitcoin is it's kind of impossible to like ban or prohibit. It's just money people use to exchange between each other. And when enough people want to use it, they can basically become very powerful. And that's even what happened in the US with the last elections, right? Because it's debatable, but a lot of people point to evidence that the Bitcoin community in particular rallied behind Donald Trump because he agreed to basically advocate for Bitcoin in the government. And that helped change the entire election. So you're going to see Bitcoiners gradually having more wealth, more power, and more influence. Yeah. And they're going to be able to make things happen in their community, in their city, in their country.
That's actually a question I had, because even though most people in the world, we follow the US election because the US affects everywhere pretty much. You guys are a big power. One thing I was looking at recently with like the Elon American Party is that regardless of, and like your comment about how, like a lot of Bitcoiners had the power to kind of shift to Trump. Now, if kind of Elon came, do you think there's we don't want to go too political, but like as the Bitcoin movement grows, and if a party, let's say not Elon, just any party becomes a pro-Bitcoin movement, Bitcoin party, do you think there's a chance that Bitcoin movement goes so big that it now becomes like a political party itself? You know what I mean? I think I worded that bit.
No, I mean, the question is, Elon's been flirting at creating a new party, and there's hints that it might be, well, what we do know is Elon is very, very, very passionate about some libertarian values you find very common in Bitcoin, in particular, like limited government, stopping overspending, eliminating the money printing. And that was a big reason for his fallout with Donald Trump and why he's not there anymore. I think you're seeing like growing the political movement behind Bitcoin is gaining power worldwide and in different communities as well. I think what you might see, you probably will see Bitcoin parties, but what I think you'll probably see more of is that elected officials, that doesn't matter what party they're in, are big time supporters of Bitcoin and are going to advocate for it because they also hold Bitcoin, because they understand its importance. I think of Cynthia Lummis, who's very famous in the US. She's a senator. She has proposed a bill for the US to start acquiring Bitcoin, a Bitcoin Act. She's also leading this like congressional committee on digital assets and all this stuff. I bring her up as an example. She's a Republican, but you're starting to see Democrats in the US that are also pro-Bitcoin. And this is what I think is going to happen over time. And if Elon or someone else starts a third party, if it gets any traction, there will be Bitcoiners in that group. And gradually you're going to see Bitcoin is a nonpartisan issue. That's to say, it's not left, right, center. Bitcoin is for everyone, and it's about making the world a better place for everyone. So when people fully get that, it doesn't matter what party affiliation they have. And so what I think will happen over time is Bitcoiners elected into government, doesn't matter what party they're from, when it comes to Bitcoin related legislation, will all align on that and won't be fighting with each other on that topic. They'll fight on everything else, but they won't fight on Bitcoin because it's one thing they have in common.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be very interesting to see how, because a lot of us Bitcoiners, we agree with each other on the libertarian kind of like topics, and also how Bitcoin fixes when you fix the money. But it's just it's so crazy to me to see, because a lot of the Bitcoiners kind of, what's it called, main talking points and like why the money is broken is because of the government being broken, right? People who are close to the money printer print more money. So to me, when I think about governments embracing Bitcoin, it will also have to be governments recognizing that they have been corrupted, and they probably already know this for a long time. So half of me is like, maybe because they can figure out a way to corrupt even with Bitcoin, that's why they're slowly accepting Bitcoin? Or is it because just that they know they can't fight Bitcoin? Like, what do you think? Because they have to kind of accept the fact that they can no longer print the money, right?
Yeah, I think it's going to be that's an important point. There are 170 countries to my last count that have a central bank that can print money. And there's going to be a lot of resistance from a lot of them, because there's a lot of corruption in money printing, and there's a lot of special interest groups that benefit from money printing. And to like voluntarily agree to stop printing money is not going to be easy for a lot of governments to take on. How exactly are we going to get to the transition to governments stopping the money printing focus? I think it's going to be a lot of, there's a couple things. I think the countries that first do it are going to start outperforming every country that doesn't, and that's going to speak louder than anything else. And I think also, as we talked about earlier, the grassroots movement, when it gets big enough and we influence elections, and we have a president in office. Trump is not a Bitcoin president. He's like, no. he goes, I don't want to say much negative about it. I just want to say he's very much focused on capitalism and his own financial benefits. He had his Trump coin, which is like the antithesis of Bitcoin.
A Bitcoin president would never. A Bitcoin president would never do that.
Bukele did not launch a Bukele coin. Let's say that, right? So when we will see really, really Bitcoin presidents emerge, not just the U.S., all over the world. And they will, if they have the force of people like Bukele who are able to really like enact change in their country, they will be able to get this to happen. But also, when you combine that with a group of congressmen and women who also are Bitcoiners, and they start talking about ending the Fed and ending this money printing, it's going to take a lot of things for it to happen. Hyperinflation as well. When they start experiencing hyperinflation, the money is no longer useful anymore. It will help accelerate a transition. It's not easy. It's going to be a hard transition to get the central bankers to stop printing money.
Yeah, because it just seems very, like you say, right? When a country starts to adopt the Bitcoin standard, you're going to see places like Bhutan accelerating like crazy, right? Them literally having dams that help you mine Bitcoin. Like, they're going to do very well in this region in Asia. And then a lot of Asian countries are going to say, oh, how come they're doing so well? But also, the money printer thing is kind of like my main question. A lot of people are benefiting so much. Corruption is rampant. How are we going to stop corruption? Are they really going to stop corruption for the benefit of the rest of the country? I don't know, but we'll see. Let's see some of the questions here we have from my. So Yannick has a question, not a question. He said, one argument I heard from my economics professor regarding central banks is that they are more or less indirectly democratic elected and kept in check. So he doesn't see much wrong with them. What is that?
I disagree. In most cases, the people that run the central bank are not elected officials. In the case of the U.S., they're not elected. They're appointed by the president, so they're not elected by the citizens. And the thing is, most of them have mandates that are either constitutionally decided or imposed in some way. The rules around what are their objectives, like the U.S. Federal Reserve has two mandates, is jobs and inflation. That's it. So their mandate is constrained, and I would disagree with your economics professor.
Maybe this person, they say that they're from Germany, so I don't actually know the German.
Could be. I'm not actually sure about Germany yet.
Okay, because our theme is 100 hours of Bitcoin study, and this is my second hour, and you are an actual Bitcoin professor. What do you suggest I learn about, not just on the financial side, in order to understand more about Bitcoin and be better at evangelizing to people about Bitcoin? Oh, I have your book out.
It's one of the chapters in my book. I think a lot, it really depends on who you're talking to, but you already brought it up earlier. This whole thing about people's, like young people really wanting to own a house and how they see that as out of reach. Understanding how fiat has monetized real estate in ways that distort the true value of real estate and has contributed directly to making housing unaffordable, I think is very powerful. If you understand like the dynamics of how fiat has flowed to real estate, how it's created additional inflation around housing, and the value of real estate, the price of real estate is above its utility by too much, and like how often it is that people aspire to own a house, but they don't really understand like the implications of owning a house, and they don't understand what factors are driving up the cost of housing, and how if we had a sound money standard like Bitcoin, it would bring the value of houses down to the actual utility of the house. I think that's a good one to understand in more depth, so you can articulate that one.
That's chapter 5, right? I'm just looking at the yeah. So I actually had a question about this, because I understand that in the US, the housing price is definitely 100% directed to inflation. But because I studied in Australia for a while, I don't know if you know much about Australian housing prices. They are through the roof, one of the craziest housing markets in the world. And I don't know if you have an opinion about that at all, whether or not it's simply because of the supply. We in Australia, there is a large immigration of people, like, no doubt at all. Like, all the houses are being bought by like people from China, people from Asia, like all that. It's not really the local Australians. Not that, like, I feel like I wonder how much of it is Australian inflation as well as just the supply, because Australia is a little bit different from US, right? There's not very many areas that you can actually live. Like, majority of the whole country you can't live in. You can only live in probably Sydney, Melbourne, or like Brisbane, Perth, like very small areas. So for those type of countries, do you think it's less about inflation or still?
No, I think I have looked at the Australian real estate market a few times. I think it's still mostly the same thing all around the world. It's a combination of fiat that is causing people to migrate their wealth into real estate, and it's the inflation caused by fiat money printing that is driving most of it. There are places where supply shortages may exist, but normally in a capitalist system, technically, like where there is supply, where there is demand, there should be new supply emerging. So the problem is, like, if there's more demand than supply, the reason there isn't more supply is because the pricing of housing and the cost of construction, everything, are out of alignment with the supply demand dynamics, resulting in no clear pathway to create housing that people can afford that are seeking housing. And it's like this ripple effect that happens with housing. And I know this happened. You talked about it with foreign buyers in Australia. This is happening in the big cities in Australia. It's not just, as you say, it's not so much that they're foreign, but like, are they living in the house?
No,
like
there's
100% of the time. And what you see happening is people are parking money in houses because they see it as a good investment and a good inflation hedge. It's also censorship resistance. Like in Australia, just like you see in Canada, like I lived in Vancouver for a while, and we would see a lot of Asian people that would invest in real estate in Vancouver only to park their money there to avoid being censored with their money from China, for example. And they leave the properties vacant. They don't even rent them. Okay, so like if they rented them, it wouldn't be that bad because at least it's putting in circulation of supply of housing. But if they buy them and they just leave them empty, it's not helping. So these are all these fiat distortions that are actually affecting the housing availability and the affordability.
Yeah, that makes so much sense because it's about the old style of investing, right? Like I know so many people, especially like even in Thailand, they don't trust anything that they can't see. So like a common comment they make is like, oh, I would invest in Bitcoin, but because Bitcoin doesn't have tangible value, I can't see it, I can't live in it. But a house or land, I can actually see it. Therefore, I want to invest in that. And your point is so right. Like once that mindset shifts and that changes, where people actually realize, parking my money in a house that depreciates over time and causing there to be a housing crisis in different cities is actually not a great way to invest your money, then you will see like a big shift in where money goes. It's not just about, oh, Bitcoin is, a new movement. It's actually all these old movements of where you invest your money will change, right?
Already changing. For my book, for that chapter, I reached out because I interact a lot with Swan Bitcoin, and I asked Swan because they do a lot of advisory to high net worth individuals, and I asked them, what are you finding from your client base regarding changing interest in real estate as an investment? And I have a quote in the chapter from one of the people that work in high net worth in Swan. I don't have the data in front of me, but basically they said just in the last year, something like, I want to say, if I'm not mistaken, they have 36 clients at least that they know of that have sold something like, I just found it. Okay. At Swan in our private wealth group, we have no less than 36 clients over the last year sell over 68 real estate properties specifically to migrate that money into Bitcoin. While it's a small sample size and not conclusive, if a person wanted to be ahead of what may be a massive capital rotation, might be wise to keep an eye on this. Point being, people are already realizing, why would I leave my money in real estate when A, it doesn't appreciate as much as Bitcoin does, B, I have to deal with maintenance, taxes every year. If I want to rent it out, I have to deal with renters who damage the property. Sometimes I go 3 months without having a replacement renter, and I have to assume all the mortgage myself. Like there's all these pains around owning real estate as an investment versus owning. If you want to own a house for your family, that's different. But like owning it as an investment is an inferior investment than Bitcoin.
Like people see my wall, right? It's been cracked for 2 months, guys. Like even more, like there was an earthquake in March and my landlord has not fixed it yet because she has 7 properties in this one condo building that she has to fix first. So, and this is not the only wall. There are multiple walls in my house that are cracked right now. And if you are a landlord or someone who owns property, you need to work on this and fix this. And this is not something that you can control. Like there hasn't been an earthquake in Bangkok in over 50 years. And we had one of the biggest ones we've ever experienced. So, you never know.
Wow. That's crazy. I didn't know that story actually.
Yeah. No. Okay. Okay, guys, interim. We're going to talk about my earthquake story because this was the scariest experience I've ever had to experience. For anyone in the comments, if you've been in an earthquake, let me know. So it was midday. It was like 1 p.m. on a weekend or something. I wasn't going anywhere. And then I went down the lift to go to 7-Eleven, right? And while I was in the lift starts shaking, which I assume maybe the building was old. So I didn't think anything of it, but then it shook really hard. I was sitting on the floor at this point because I was like, okay, if the lift fell through, maybe it's smarter to be closer to the floor of the lift. But I was praying. I was like, God, please, like, let me out of this lift. I live on like a really high floor. So like, I don't know if I fell, would I make it? So at the level 20th, the door opens, like miraculously out of nowhere, the door opens and I walk out and no one was there. So I was just like, maybe because somehow it opened and then the building starts to shake really hard. At first, my mind did not go to earthquake. I thought, oh, there it is. My building is old. Like my building is about to collapse all on its own because it is old.
Well,
And then
if Bangkok hadn't had an earthquake in your whole lifetime, it's not
never.
surprising you didn't think there was you weren't thinking it was an earthquake.
And then I started hearing like cracks. I heard the walls crack and the metal just start to shake. And then I realized, wait a second, that building's also shaking. So I looked out, and the walls were squeezing in each other, and a crack out of nowhere formed in the wall. Like I saw the concrete crack, and I was like, we are in an earthquake. So a few other people who were on the floor were running around. Like they were actually headless chicken, like didn't know what to do, because none of us know what an earthquake was. And we all went to the staircase, but we didn't run down right away. I don't know why. I think if it was a real earthquake and our building was going to fall, we might have all died because we were like, oh, like,
Well,
should
it
we
was
just,
a real earthquake.
it was, but should we all just stand here for like 5 minutes? And which we did. And then when someone from a higher floor starts to run, we were like, okay, we should run, right? This is what we do.
Whoops.
So we ran together. Yeah, it was a big oopsie. We were just like, what do we do? We stand here scared together.
You could have popped up ChatGPT and asked, what should we do right now? The building is shaking. It might be an earthquake. What's the next step?
Nothing worked, actually. So when we got down, everyone was outside. And also, internet wasn't working. Phone signals weren't working because every single person was out of their building trying to call their family. So I was getting calls, which I couldn't pick up, and then I couldn't call out. So the whole of Bangkok shut down because no one had a procedure. I could tell that the traffic was starting, right? People were already taking their cars out, going on the streets. But in the first 20 minutes, already you can see that. And for the rest of the day, I think the traffic was there until 10 p.m. that night because people were still trying to move out. They didn't feel safe. They were scared that if there was an aftershock, something worse could happen. And also because there was a video that was kind of spread online of a building collapsing. So this is governmental corruption. So the only building in the whole of Bangkok that collapsed literally from the top down, people died in that building. It was construction. It was still in construction. Was a government building for the anti-money laundering department. Can you believe that? The only building in the whole of Bangkok, which caused questions, right? Why is it that this one building collapsed and no other building collapsed? Is it because of the material they were using? And they were the anti-money laundering department of the country? You know what I mean? I was like, yeah, because it wasn't like the only country that was being, the only building that was being built. There were many other buildings being built at the same time, and none of them collapsed. Just this one. It was a, I think, 20-floor building. So,
not a great sign for government-led construction. Let's put it that way. I need to step out, but I was wondering if you want, what if I did a speed round of answering some of the questions I see we haven't gotten to yet? You down with that?
Okay. Yes, okay. Let's do it. Which one?
I'm going down. I saw a few here. Do you guys know, this is from Struggle for Sats. Do you know the best way to have a normie pay me via Bitcoin, even if they don't have any? That's not easy, although it depends on what country you're in. There are some platforms, like here in Mexico, there's a platform called Swapito, which is basically allowing people to do peer-to-peer and with their with businesses, like exchange between fiat and Bitcoin without actually holding the Bitcoin. So there are platforms that allow that. I'm not sure about Strike doing that. I see somebody proposing that. I mean, Strike does allow you to, for example, to take your salary or part of your salary in Bitcoin, for example, even when your company is paying you in fiat. But that's different than being able to exchange peer-to-peer. So I'm not totally sure on that. Going to just keep going. What are your thoughts? This is from Prescott Frost. What are your thoughts on if governments would ever confiscate Bitcoin? This is a big debate and a growing one in a lot of Bitcoin circles. I mean, if the world is going to become on a Bitcoin standard, which we all think it will, and governments are going to be competing just like companies and everyone else for stacking more Bitcoin. If you were a government and you wanted to get a lot of Bitcoin fast, what would be the way to do it? You can't mine it that fast. There's only a block every 10 minutes. You can't buy it that fast unless you're just printing tons of money. And if you did that, you're going to create a run on Bitcoin. It's going to exacerbate the price. So the best, not the best for society, but the best for the government, if that's what they want to do, would be to confiscate Bitcoin in high volumes. Who has the highest volume of Bitcoin? Well, the ETFs today have over 1 million Bitcoin. Strategy has over 600,000 Bitcoin. Those would
Possible
be
strategies Bitcoin, because I'm quite worried. They have 3% now. Like,
Yeah.
it's great. I love strategy, but it's getting dangerous. What if the government decides, oh, you guys are monopoly, we confiscate some of your Bitcoin?
So the argument that there's a couple things in their benefit. One is that apparently they have their Bitcoin in thousands of wallets across multiple sort of custody partners. So they couldn't just come in and just take their Bitcoin with one wallet. It would be a concerted attack. I think, where there's also susceptibility is with Coinbase and some of these other massive exchanges. Coinbase has a couple million Bitcoin. So, out of 21 million. So it's like 10% of the world's Bitcoin is in Coinbase. So those are strategic risk factors for attack if it happens. So it is a risk. Let's just accept there's a risk there, I think. Let's see. Keep going.
Always hold your own Bitcoin, guys.
What's that?
I just said, always hold your own Bitcoin.
Exactly. I had a big debate not a debate, but I went deep into that topic with my students today, explaining how you think the money in the bank is your money. And I gave them all the examples, how it's not always your money, how governments confiscate your money, how banks block transactions, how, now in Spain, they're capping how much money you can withdraw without getting written approval from the government. I mean, you think it's yours, it's not, but the only money in the world that is actually yours, like really yours, is Bitcoin and self-custody.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess that's all the rapid fire answers that I see.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Boyd, for joining me today. You are my first guest, and I hope we can do more of the two professors in a pod. Have the real professor come and teach us. And guys, for people who are like, oh, her questions are so dumb, I'm supposed to ask these questions to the professor. Who else am I going to ask? You know what I mean? Like, if we don't ask it candidly and openly, you just have it in your minds and you have it with no answers. So
we're good answers. Thanks, everyone.
All right, bye. Thank you, Boyd. See you guys. See you next time.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. Let me hide the. So now that we have had our first guest, and this is the second hour, I guess second hour and a half, I'll stay for like maybe 10 more minutes, but thank you everyone for watching. If anyone has any comments or questions, you can still comment today. I think today most comments were from YouTube, which is surprising, but very fun. Just to give everyone a bit of an update on kind of like what I'm thinking, what are we doing, content based. I've been kind of MIA on X pretty much, but for those who are on YouTube, you can see I upload almost every day on our shorts. And the plan is next week when I go to London. So for everyone who's wondering, okay, what is this Europe trip we're talking about? I'm going to the Honey Badger Baltic Bitcoin Conference, which is in Latvia, early August, right? Which is, for those who don't know, it's one of the most OG Bitcoin conferences. It's Bitcoin only, no other coins, no nothing, just Bitcoin. And I'm very excited because it's a small conference. And during that conference, I guess before that, we go to London, to the London Stock Exchange. I have been invited by the London Bitcoin Company to tour the London Stock Exchange with them, as they're the first Bitcoin treasury to ever be on the London Stock Exchange. I'm also going to contact the Smarter Web kind of team and see if I could get an interview with Andrew and also Coincilium, because those are the three main Bitcoin treasuries that I've been in contact with. If anyone has any idea of other people I should talk to, please let me know on X or anywhere. I'm also trying to get a meeting with the blockchain group, Alexander, to see, like the CEO, to see if we can talk a little bit more about what is the Bitcoin adoption in Europe like. He is one of the leading figures within Bitcoin treasuries in Europe. So yeah, that is the upcoming plan for the next few weeks. So England, Paris, Italy, Latvia, and I think because of last week's discovery about Turkey, I might see if I have time to go to Turkey and just talk to a few Bitcoiners there before I head to Hong Kong for Bitcoin Asia. So it's going to be a very interesting few weeks, and I am so excited to get back and sharing that with people on X, all my Bitcoin family here, and also make a little bit more of a Bitcoiner's lifestyle content. For a lot of people who have seen my content, I'm really not much about the financial technical analysis of Bitcoin, but more on the people within Bitcoin. As a human first technologist, I want to see how it affects people's lives directly, and show you guys how it's changed my life, right? Like before, I never used to travel this much for conferences or for Bitcoin, but since really being more involved, opening myself up, showing my face in Bitcoin, I'm traveling around the world just to talk to different people who are in Bitcoin treasuries or whatever. And yeah, that would be very fun to also see if I could spend Bitcoin in any of these countries, because Europe is known to not be very Bitcoin friendly, right? So, okay, are there any questions? Yeah, so I will be reaching out to some people. There are some recommendations here about people I can talk to. But yeah, very happy. Thank you guys for joining my second study hour. It's been so fun. I think I'll bring more people in. In the comments for YouTube and X, and I guess Twitch as well, but I'm very new to Twitch. Let me know who would be an interesting professor to teach me, or I can ask questions. This is a little bit different from a podcast episode, I guess. It's more of a conversation. So we're just going to chit chat and see what their thoughts are on different areas within Bitcoin. And I know we like promoted this, but it's not about promoting because none of us gets paid to promote this book. But this is Boyd's book. He is the guy who was talking just now, and it's different in that it is a technologist approach to Bitcoin, not a economics professor or someone who is on the financial side. Someone who is a technologist who is on business and who is more about sustainability and entrepreneurship. That is the perspective here. And I think it'll be really cool for me to also maybe talk about other books. So maybe in the next episode, I can get like an author of maybe other Bitcoin books to come on and share a little bit about how they did their research. Because to me, I'm curious, like, you know, what inspired you to write a whole book about Bitcoin? That's pretty interesting. So yeah, thank you guys. All the best to everyone. Thank you for joining. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.